Hi there. We are getting ready for our Backpacking 101 class. Welcome, everyone. And it is 5:02. I'm a little bit delayed. I apologize. But I'll just give everyone just a few moments to get on our chat. Hi, Marcella. Welcome. Where are you guys tuning in from? Let me know in the comments. And what are you drinking? Hey there, Angela. Nice to see you again. Yeah, I'm just gonna have water. I put it in my my glass here. But super excited to talk to you guys about Backpacking 101. I hope you guys joined last week for Camping 101. And let me know where you are tuning in from and also what you're up to. It is officially like going on, more than 2 months of, this coronavirus shutdown. And I'm sure everyone is ready to get back out there and get back to life. But I don't know how much longer, we're going to be held to, stay at home orders. So, these classes are intended to help you to get ready to be safe outdoors and keep you educated and hopefully also feeling supported and just, to be able to get together with our community. So Angela is drinking water on the rocks. Awesome. Erin is from Woodinville, Washington. Nice. Ice green tea. Anna is in Murray, Utah. Diet Dr. Pepper. Stacy, hi. Hi there. She is joining us from Utah as well. I love that. That's awesome. And I'm trying to see the comments. So you're excited about this one. You've only backpacked once when you were 14. You didn't like it. Okay. My friend has talked you into trying, your friend has talked you into trying this summer and you're excited and nervous and you will take any pointers. Awesome. I'm so excited to talk to you guys today. And Heather, you're joining us from Ohio and it's getting nice over there. So you're getting ready to get out and about. Awesome. Hey, Emily, nice to see you. Gustavo, hello there. Okay, so we're going to get ready to get started. It looks like Christina's joining us from South Haven, Michigan. Awesome. Local hikes at preserves, but looking forward to trying backpacking. You have camped at state parks and already had a glass of wine with dinner. One is enough. Awesome. Hey, Marie, nice to see you. Nadia, Quebec, Canada. Awesome. Marcella, she's visiting from or joining us from Carson, California, drinking some craft beers. Cheers. Definitely ready for some outdoors. Never backpacked yet, but planning the Trans Catalina Trail this October. Okay, so let me let you guys know. Julie from New Hampshire, hey. So we're going to get started, you guys. I live in Orange County, California. I want to let you know that I backpacked the John Muir Trail last year. So I am officially able to talk to you about backpacking 21 days of nothing but packing it in, packing it out. Super excited to share my knowledge with you guys today. And I've also backpacked that trail that you were talking about, Marcella, which is the Trans Catalina. I've backpacked all around, really mainly here in California in the Sierra. It's incredible, such a beautiful place. And then also traveling wise, I tend to backpack as well. And I'll put all my stuff in a small pack and I'll travel for a month. So I'm absolutely able to talk to you guys about backpacking. But I want you to know that as a community, I would love your tips. Like I said, what makes this whole chat and talk super fun is the interaction because you guys also know things. And so I'm happy to keep you guys incorporated in the chat. So feel free as we're talking, feel free to give your pointers, your tips, and we're going to get started. So first thing I'm going to do, just give me a second. I'm going to start. I have a backpacking slide that I'm going to present to you guys. I'm actually just going to kind of turn the camera around so you guys could see it here and there, not all the time. But let me just go ahead and get it going so that I can have that ready to go for you guys. And really excited to talk to you guys today about all this stuff. All right, so it looks like we have David and Amy joining us. Welcome. So we're talking about backpacking. So I'm just going to turn the camera around for a few little shots. So what you need to know to get started backpacking. So first things first, the first thing you need to know is the planning, right? And I'll show you these slides as I go, but the planning is the first step to backpacking. And all of the classes that I have prepared, if you guys joined the last classes, my goal was to get you and give you all the information as to how to plan hikes and bring you on this journey to get you to this point. So last week we talked about Camping 101. I have not uploaded those videos up to YouTube yet, but I will be getting them up as soon as possible. So, one of the most important things to get you started on backpacking is getting yourself mentally and physically prepared, because backpacking, not only do you need that endurance, but now you're carrying extra weight. So one of the best things you can do is to do some training, like take the 52 hike challenge and to start putting weight in your pack. So camping is a great way, like I mentioned last week, to see, do I like sleeping outside? How do I feel? And just being able to drive up to a campsite. And that way, if for some reason you're not feeling comfortable, it's easy for you to drive home. And I also recommended that you actually sleep, actually go camping somewhere local to home when you first start. So, mentally preparing yourself, like I said, starting, a hiking journey and then gaining that elevation gain, doing that mileage, increasing your mileage as you go, super important before you start backpacking, because the last thing you want to do is, not be prepared and then have that horrible experience. And that's what can happen. If you just kind of jump into backpacking and you don't recognize how much that weight and that elevation is really going to affect you, that's going to change your perspective on backpacking. And honestly, I love backpacking. I don't know if there's people in the community that are here in the chat that love it as much as I do, but what I love about backpacking is that you can see places that you normally won't see where it's a walk-up situation. One of my favorite backpacking trips has been Big Pine Lakes here in California, and it was incredible. And even though I'm an avid backpacker, it still kicked my butt. The elevation did. So I had to train for that. And even with the training, I still was feeling ill. And so those are things that you need to consider. So as you're planning, picking a location, you can go, like I always mention, you can talk to your friends, you can go on our hiking community chapter pages and ask people where their favorite backpacking trips are, especially like local and easy backpacks. You can ask your local, REI employees for their feedback. There's so many different ways, but I would recommend when you're first starting out, you might want to just do like a 3-mile in, just to kind of get used to the extra weight and all of that, all the stuff we're going to talk about in this chat. So once you pick your location, you need to research, things like your permits, you need your logistics in place, and then you need to obviously plan for the weather. And we've talked a lot about how to do this in all of the last classes we have had. So, hey, Jamie, nice to see you. Hi, Gordon, Graham, nice to see you all. So once you've got your research done, planning your permits, we actually went through that and how you can do that through recreation.gov. Sometimes you have to do a printout and send it into the Forest Service, different entities that are going to be in charge of the wilderness area. So a lot of times in the national parks, like you can't just go and backpack. You actually need to get permits to go ahead and take those day trips or those overnight backpacking trips. So highly recommend that you get used to or research how to get the permits. Sometimes you can walk up to, like the Sierra has the Interagency Center. It's a stop here in the Sierra. You can go in and actually ask them, hey, what permits are available? And they're really great about giving you information when you walk up. And sometimes you can get a permit for that day. Sometimes it's for the next day. But there are walk-up permits available. But obviously knowing where you're going is really important because you want to have a map with you. We've talked about the importance of map and compass training. Hey, Nicole from Southern California. So, that's all super, super important. So, um, after you've gotten that part down, you're going to definitely need to get your gear. And again, over the last couple of weeks, we have talked all about like the 10 essentials and the gear you need to get started. But backpacking gear is a completely different beast. Last week, I brought out all this camping gear and I showed it to you guys. I decided for this class not to bring it all out because it would just be it would be too difficult with this format. But in the future, as we progress, I'm definitely thinking about doing a backpacking 101 course that's going to be online, and I will bring the gear out for that. But I will show you some pictures that I have here. So the gear completely changes. So last week when we were doing the camping 101, I talked about as you're gathering your gear, you want to also think about, am I going to be backpacking? And if so, you would want to get the most lightweight gear possible. And the reason for that is because when you're backpacking, every ounce counts. Trust me, when I did the John Muir Trail, my pack at one point was like over 45 pounds. And there was a point where I was just so over it that when we exited to put more stuff, in our pack to resupply, I ran to the post office to dump as much stuff as I could because it was just so heavy. And so trust me when I say you're going to want ultra lightweight gear. And so we'll talk about that. So getting your gear in place, it is a costly investment. So what I recommend if you're starting out is ask a friend, ask your friends or people if they have gear that they can loan you so you can test it out. And also places like, I don't know right now with the coronavirus situation, but I know like in the past REI does do rentals. So that's something that you can look into so that you're not shelving out all this money and then trying to figure out, do I even like backpacking? So for example, I thankfully have enough gear to supply 5 people on a backpacking trip. So, if you lived here in Southern California and you wanted to reach out to me and I can loan you some stuff, etc., that would be an example of like, I'm sure you have friends that will be able to provide you with some gear. So absolutely take advantage of your friends and, asking them for assistance as you're getting into the outdoors is really a great way. And then, obviously we're going to talk more about this next week, and it's food. You need to get your food in order and prepare. So I recommend for a starter, you do like I said, 1 to 3 miles in for a backpack, and that you just do an overnight. Because again, if you don't like it, you're not committed to like a really long 2 to 3 day trek or trip. And then, again, you don't know how you're going to do on a trip until you actually get out there. So let me show you this slide real quick. So we talked about mental, physical preparation, picking your location, researching are you going to need to filter your water, your permits, logistics, your weather, your gear, your food. That's your planning. So next slide is going to be all about the mental and physical preparation. Okay, so sorry guys. I almost ended this call or this chat, apologies. So let's talk about getting ready and prepared, okay? So we talked about how important it is to have that mental and physical preparation. So, you're gonna wanna start hiking your 1 mile, 2 mile, 3 mile increase with, as you're getting out there and you're conditioning your body. And then you're gonna wanna do a conditioning hike, something that's some sort of a peak, or something that is going to challenge you elevation wise. I can tell you that a lot of the mountains here in the Sierra are very high. They're like up, 10,000 feet and above, and you're gaining like 1,000 to 3,000 feet of elevation gain. And that with that heavy weight it's quite significant. So you want to absolutely train not only for mileage, but that elevation and long days when you first start out before you start putting the weight in your pack. And then you're going to want to, like we talked about, now you're going to want to start training with weight in your pack. Things you can do, you can put like tons of water in there and your Nalgene bottles. You could actually pack your pack as if you were going for a backpacking trip if you have your gear. So you may want to weigh your pack and see, you know, does it have the weight? When I was training for the JMT, I actually did wear my pack out quite a few times. I didn't do more than, I think we did like, one of the times I did I want to say Cucamonga Peak was like 12-ish miles, maybe 10. I don't remember the exact mileage. And then one time, like I just did like a 5 mile a couple of times with the pack on. And also you are going to want to train with your pack. And we're going to talk about packs in a little bit, because believe it or not, you need to make sure the pack is comfortable. There is nothing worse than buying a pack and it doesn't work with your body. And that can happen. And let me tell you, I was on a trip one time and I did the Trans-Catalina Trail, and the pack I brought was absolutely the worst pack that I could bring for that trip. For some reason, it didn't work well with my body, and it made my trip that much more, I would say, uncomfortable, because I was chafing on the sides and things like that. I'm not going to mention what pack it was. I don't even remember, but it just was not a good pack. So training with your pack is super important. And then, you know, picking a local backpacking destination. Okay, so here in Southern California, there's a place called Little Jimmy Campground. Actually, here in Orange County, Crystal Cove actually has a place where you can backpack. It's like, I don't know, I want to say like 2 miles. 1 second, you guys. My dog thinks he can start chewing up stuff while we're in this conversation. Really important conversation. So Crystal Cove has a trail you can hike into. It's like, I want to say like 2 miles. So it's a wonderful little trail to just kind of get started and see how you do. So let's see. Some comments so far. Gustavo says, totally, very comfortable backpack is a must. Absolutely. I'm going to drink some water. So those are really important things. I'm going to jump into the next slide. I'll just show it to you guys. So next slide is all about picking a location. And we kind of quickly touched on this earlier. So some of the things that when you're looking for a backpacking location, you may want to look for a walk-up location, car camp, like I said earlier, just to get started and to at least give you that starting point to try this out, you know, see if you like it. And then, you know, start with a 2 to 3 mile hike in. Again, if for some reason throughout the night you decide you change your mind, you can hike back out with your headlamp. And you know, you're good to go, right? Versus when you're committed to something that's much longer with a lot of elevation gain, and then now you drove really far from home. So I think that's really important. And again, we talked about, how do I find these locations? Again, you need that inspiration, right? You can research online, you can ask friends, you could buy a book, so many different ways. If you guys have any tips as I'm speaking, please add them to the comments and I'll read them to the community. How do you pick your backpacking locations? How did you pick your backpacking locations when you first started? I know for me, a lot of times I would go on Instagram and I would like look at pictures, or in our community boards, we have Facebook groups. So I've seen people and I'll ask, where is that? So, so let's see. Damien said, and there are no dumb questions, by the way. Is backpacking overnight? What is the difference between backpacking and hiking? Must be over. Yeah. So the difference between backpacking is that you usually spend the night, you carry everything in your pack, which we're going to talk about. And then you set up your camp and you have your dinner, and then you either continue on your journey or you actually, exit the next day. Those are called overnight trips. Backpacking can also be considered when you travel and you put everything on your backpack. Like I was telling you guys earlier, I've done that. I've literally packed all my stuff for 30 days in a small pack and traveled through so many different countries. And in that situation, I did mainly stay in hotels or little, places, but I carried everything in my pack for the whole trip. And so places I've done that include like Peru, Thailand, Philippines. I mean, I've traveled extensively. I've been very lucky to explore that. And the freedom you get of just being able to put on your backpack and having everything you need, it really makes you mindful of, we don't really need a lot to survive in life and to enjoy life. It really can all be carried almost in a pack. And so it kind of makes you think like, wow, I have all this stuff. So let's see. Marcella says Henninger Flats, she heard, is a good training place for backpacking. Thank you for the tip, Marcella. We really appreciate that. So we talked a little bit about, we're going to move into the next slide I will show you. So we have research. We have research permits, water, and logistics. So we're going to go ahead and talk a little bit about that. So let me just make sure, okay, just making sure that my camera is not acting up there. Okay, so before you go, you definitely, okay, let's talk about the John Muir Trail, okay? When I did this trip, I had to be super mindful of where are the water sources, because that is going to, tell me when I need to filter my water and how much water I need to be carrying. So I want to let you know that there was an app we used called Gut Hook, or I believe it's Gut Hook app. It was amazing because that app actually not only showed you the whole John Muir Trail and was a GPS while we were on the trail, and it would tell you like, here's where you are, here's how many miles to that next location. It would have like campsites, it would have water sources. Now, remember, you can't always depend on those water sources to have water, but you should always carry extra water in your backpack and when you're backpacking. But it's definitely really important to know, where am I going to be filtering water overnight? And then that's a whole nother conversation, right? Like, you need to have a filter. We're going to get into your gear in a little bit. But, it's really important that as you're planning, as you're getting your permits, as all of this is coming together, you also need to know, like, well, how much food do I need, right? Like, that's really important, because depending on the length of your trip, you're going to consume more food. Remember, now you're carrying weight. So you're going to consume more food. So you need to be prepared for that. So let me see what else we have here. I really like this post that I'm seeing from Angela. Angela says her first backpacking trip, she spent $3,000 at REI and hit a section on the Appalachian Trail. About 45 seconds in, she knew she had made a big mistake. I prepared better for the next trip. I'm wondering, Angela, what was it that was, what was the big mistake? Was it that you had too much gear, or was it that you hadn't prepared for a backpacking trip prior? That would be a really interesting conversation topic. So, that's why the research phase is so important. Okay. So, and again, feel free to ask your questions, add your comments as we're going, but let's continue on with the next slide, because I want to keep giving you as much as I can. So checking the conditions, super important before you leave. And we've talked about this so many times throughout these conversations that we've had in the last, 2 months on being outdoorsy and being outdoors, and being safe. One of the most important things you can do is make sure that you're prepared for the weather. And so that's why I always talk about, always carry a rain jacket in your pack, no matter what, because if something happens, it's going to insulate you. It could be used as a emergency blanket a little bit. And I mean, you really should have an emergency blanket, but at least it will insulate you. And then also, if it gets really cold on your backpacking trip, it will retain more heat if you need to use those extra layers. So, it's so important, you guys, like the night before you leave, to double check the weather. Don't be the person that gets caught in bad weather because you didn't do your homework. And if something happens, the mountain or the trail will always be there. So your life is not worth losing over going somewhere because of the pictures or because you were so excited to do something. Look at what's happened, right? look at this coronavirus thing. We all had, I'm sure, so many plans. As a matter of fact, my son and I were supposed to do the Camino this July. I don't think we're doing that, you know? And so it's like some things are out of our control and some things we can control. And being mindful of the weather is one of those things that we should always be thinking about. I also want to share with you guys, so there's a website here that we put on this slide. It's weather.gov or mountainforecast.com. Also, in our last conversations, we've talked about as you gain altitude, it gets colder. For every, I believe, 1,000 feet, you drop like 3 degrees. So, and don't quote me on that because I have the information written down. I don't have it on my slides here, but it does get colder as you gain elevation. So be mindful. And the wind chill also changes things. So if it looks like it's going to be really windy, or, you know, you may want to reconsider your trip depending on where you are going. So let's see what other information. So Angela said she was just way out of shape. She finished the trip but suffered. Yeah, and I'm sure like those things traumatize you, you know, if you're going on a backpacking trip. Honestly, like the John Muir Trail was extreme and it was very difficult. And that's why I never really published that information, because even though I'm in shape and I did everything to be in shape, it's like day in and day out for 21 days, putting your stuff away, taking it out, your hands get blistered. I mean, it was extreme. And then it's about 50,000. I'm going to show you this if I didn't show you already. So 50,000 feet, literally. My friend gave this to me that I did it with. So it's like 50,000 feet of elevation gain, you know, like it's a lot, you know, some days you just mentally get extremely exhausted. So I think that starting out small is much better than doing something that's just extremely exhausting and overwhelming. So, yeah, I mean, weather, super important, and just be mindful, be mindful. I'm just going to quickly show you this slide. Last hikes we've talked about, or last couple of classes, we've talked about your 10 essentials. I'm not going to read them through because you should know what these are by now. If you don't know, you can go onto our website and go to the store tab and then just click on 10 essentials and that'll take you to the page. But you should always be carrying those 10 essentials when you're outdoors. So because it is, let's see, I'm going to see what time it is right now. I don't see it here. I'm guessing it's about 4:30 or so. We need to continue going through. We have so much to cover. So let's get into the good stuff. I took this picture from REI, and it's basically a little just silly, you know, it's just a little silly, cute picture of all the gear you're going to want. But I'm just going to kind of walk you through it. I want to let you guys know that on when we're done with this video, I will publish some links so that you can get all of this information. But I have printed out this checklist off of rei.com, and I'm just going to move back a little bit. I also laminated it. One of our community members said to me, you know, why don't you laminate it? Because I backpack so much that if I really wanted to use like one of those markers that you can erase, you can easily check it off and then erase it and be done with it, right? And reuse this over and over again instead of printing it. So we're going to go through this. Let's see. Anna says, I overpack. Yeah, Anna, that's one of the biggest things that happen. So that's why the more you test what you need, you know, you're going to know, you refine. But the only way to get there is to actually get out and backpack, right? And to try it. Katie, I miss my treks up to the Sierra. I mean, we all do. So hopefully soon. And Cerise wants to know if I can compare my JMT experience to the Trans-Catalina Trail. Absolutely. I will absolutely talk about that at the end because I want to get through this. All right. So let's talk about gear. Last week, we talked all about the most important stuff that you need. Right off the bat, you need your tent. You're going to need your mat. You're going to want an insulated mat. Some people, depending on how lightweight you want to go with like those foam pads. They're really thin. They look like an egg carton almost, and then they collapse, right? That's like a really basic Thermarest makes it, I believe. And depending on your comfort level, you're gonna want an actual inflatable sleeping pad. And I highly recommend that whatever you do, you always look to get the lightest weight possible. However, disclaimer, the more lightweight you go, the more expensive it gets. So just be aware. And another disclaimer, when you get these mattress pads, do not, under any circumstance, sit on the mat outside of your tent, because I've actually done that before and it popped on me. And the worst thing you can do on a backpacking trip is have no mattress, because once you're on the floor and on the ground, that's why I also recommend as a double up to have that extra foam underneath. If your body, or even if you're on your sleeping bag and you touch the floor, it is so cold that there is no insulation from the ground and your sleep will be not good. So you absolutely want to make sure that you double check your sleeping pad is not, that there's no air bubbles or holes or anything like that, and that you have that backup if possible. But like I said, you can also just go with that super lightweight pad if you want, and just use that. Sorry, guys. Again, I have a dog that loves chewing on things. So let's talk about, backpacking tent. You're also going to want to make sure that it's the lightest weight. If you're just going to be backpacking by yourself, you can get a one-man tent. But if you're backpacking with a friend, or if you're backpacking with like a couple, the best thing you can do is get a lightweight two-man tent, and then you split the tent. Like someone carries the poles, the other person carries, the fly, the other person carries the actual tent, someone carries the footprint, so you can split the weight amongst the people in the group. So you're absolutely, one of the most important things is going to be, this is your sleeping system, right? And we talked about it last week briefly. I showed you guys all of the different items that you bring with you when you camp. We talked about the sleeping pad. So what about your sleeping bag? We've talked about that and how important it is to know the weather and the temperature, because that's going to really, that's going to give you that guidance as to how warm do you need your sleeping bag to be. There's different levels in terms of like the temperature ratings, but personally, I recommend like a 0-degree bag, because if you get really hot, you can just open it up. But if worst case scenario, you don't want to be super cold. If you're super cold, you don't end up sleeping. It's really uncomfortable. And even with a 15-degree sleeping bag on the JMT, I was cold some nights, and it wasn't supposed to drop more than, I think, 25 degrees, 30 degrees at night, but I was still cold. So you absolutely should test out your sleeping bag. But personally, if you're going to be, and also depending on how often you're going to be backpacking, but if you're going to be backpacking a lot, I highly recommend investing into a ultra lightweight and also, a lower degree sleeping bag. If you're going to be only backpacking in the summertime in hot weather, you can get away with like a 30-degree bag, no problem. Because even at night, even if it's hot, it usually will dip down into the 50s, sometimes, maybe a little bit colder than that. So that's really important. So that's actually your sleeping, your sleeping situation. And one of the most important things that we haven't talked about is that pack. So I'll actually show you what I have here. So here is, an example of a pack and what that's going to look like. As you can see, it's not your traditional day pack backpack. I didn't bring any with me today to show you guys, because they're just so big that I just figured we would talk about them. And there's so many different brands, and there's so many different styles, and there's ultra lightweight packs. It's going to depend on how often you're backpacking and what your goals are. Personally, I do like more support. So my last pack has been the Gregory Jade pack, and it's the 65, and I've loved it. It's great. And my friend used a super ultra lightweight pack on the JMT, and I mean, that worked for her, and it was really awesome. What I didn't like about that pack was that you had to take everything out, and it didn't have compartments, whereas to like the Gregory, it has like a middle like zipper so you can get in the middle, or it has a bottom zipper so you can get in the bottom, and the top, the top cap. So it had a lot of different ways of me accessing things throughout the day when I did the John Muir Trail. So let me just take a quick look at some of your comments. And Lisa says she is buying a tent tomorrow with REI Sale. She's getting a 2-man. It is a packaged weight of 5.5 pounds. Is it too much? She's looking to buy the REI Half Dome. I think that's the one I have, Lisa. And I've actually taken that on many backpacking trips. And again, if you're splitting it with a friend, it's fine. But again, remember, you can also compare the different sizes and weights on rei.com. And also remember that I believe the company that does super lightweight includes Nemo and includes Big Agnes. They tend to do pretty lightweight. So you can compare the REI tents to those tents and then decide. But when you're starting out, if you're not going to be going to do something like the John Muir Trail, I think you can get away with, that I believe you said the Half Dome. So, yeah, I like it. I love it. I actually use I believe the Quarter Dome is the one that's the single person, and I have that one, and I also have the Half Dome for 2 people. So I've used it many times. I like it, and I do recommend it. And April says, have I talked about the water purification systems? Not yet. We're going to get into that. All right. So we've talked about these packs. And one of the most important things that I said I would talk about in this class today was how to pack your packs. So we're going to get into that. Let me have a sip of water here. All right, let me show you this image that I found. Here's an image. You can search it online. And basically it shows you, here's how you pack a pack. Like down here, you're going to put it depends. This pad, sometimes I put it here on the side. You can put it in the back here. But basically on the bottom is where you're going to usually put your sleeping bag. And then in the middle, you might stuff your tent and stuff like that. And then depending on where you're going, in here, you're going to put your bear can with your food and your cooking. And what I do is I actually stuff my clothing into all the crevices, because you're going to notice your gear is not going to be perfect and it's going to be shaped really weird. So instead of putting my clothes here, I just stuff it in the middle. And then that way my pack isn't so high. And then up here, you're going to put, this person has like 10 essentials and the camera and mapping guides, all that stuff. And then right here, on the side, you could put your tent poles, and, you have to put your water in here as well. So this is just one example. So you could see sleeping bag here. Here's another great little image, right? You put your sleeping bag. You also want to make sure that this part here is going to be a little bit more lightweight, a little bit medium weight, heavy stuff right in the middle, because that's how you want your weight distribution, so you don't hurt your back. You don't want your heavy stuff on the bottom. You want it more in the middle. And then your lightweight stuff in the front and lighter stuff up on top. So I hope this was helpful. I did find this image on Wendy's Tips, and I did find it when I was looking for an image to show you guys on how to pack a pack. And don't forget, once you're getting ready to backpack, practice putting your stuff in your pack, because I have had packs before that when I first started backpacking, it was hard to get all my stuff to fit. One of the best things you can do is to get these sleeping bag, what is it called? It's a compression sack. So what happens is your sleeping bag is huge, right? And so when you put it in this baggie, some of the baggies are like, they don't have the compression, but when you have the compression sacks, you can actually squeeze out all the air and make a sleeping bag that was this big into this big. So look up compression sacks. They are super, super awesome. And they make a huge difference in just size, like the size that is going to take up space in your pack. Another thing, just a quick side tip, as we're talking about sleeping bags, at the moment you get home from your trip, let your sleeping bag air out, because sometimes it can get moisture, and the last thing you want is, your your sleeping bag to smell horrible. So let it air out, and also you want to maintain the fluff, because once you lose the fluff, you're going to lose the warmth. So the more you keep it compressed in that sack, it's going to compress, whether it's, if you have feathers or whatever material, it's going to compress that. So as soon as you get home, you want to take it out and you want to put it in a bag, hopefully the bag that it came in, that will allow for that expansion for your sleeping bag. And that's how you can have a sleeping bag that's going to last many years. So, let me take a look at some of these other comments that I have. Okay, not yet. No other comments. Great. All right, so let me just continue showing you some of these slides. So here is our sleeping system. Here is, your mattress pad, and we've talked about your sleeping bag and your tent. So the stuff we've already kind of briefly talked about. Now we're going to talk a little bit about your cooking and your meals and stuff like that. Next class, we will talk more about food. We're just going to do a brief overview today. So you're going to need a stove or some way of cooking. When you're backpacking, you're not going to bring that big Coleman stove with you, but you're going to want something small. Last week, I showed you guys the jet boil. I personally love it, but I also know people that buy something called like the Whisper Light, which is just the little... it's just the burner, and then you can buy a titanium steel pot, and you bring your cups, and, there's collapsible bowls, and you bring your, different, your knife and your spoon, and, all of that stuff that you're going to need to cook. But with like the jet boil, you only boil water, and then you use, bags or your bowls to cook your food, okay? So you can do, MREs. Those are like meals like the Mountain House meals, or there's Alpine Air. There's so many different brands. There's Backpacker's Pantry, and I've tried many of these meals, let me tell you, when I did the John Muir Trail and as I've been backpacking throughout the years. So let me just make sure that as we're talking that I'm not forgetting anything important. I mean, highly recommend, again, also remember as you're backpacking, as you're doing, practice. How do I turn on my stove? One of the, as a female, I'm just not trying to say that, I'm just saying as a female, I know for me, it's been a challenge when I first got my jet boil, or when I first had to like light a match or light, what is it called? The little, the lighter, right? Like I was afraid that I was going to like blow my head off or something. So I had to learn how to get comfortable with lighting, the canister, not the canister, but the little, boiler, I'm like drawing a blank, but anyhow, you guys know what I'm talking about. The burner. There we go. The burner. So I was having a hard time. I was scared. Like I was like, oh no, I don't know if it's too much, propane or whatnot. So get comfortable with lighting and making sure you know how to use your stove. So important. And also, depending on what kind of a stove you buy, there's different types out there. Like there's some that I've seen that are super, like for super high altitude. Those burners are much different than something easy like this jet boil. You push a button, you turn on the gas, and then you push a button and it turns it on for you. But sometimes those buttons fail, and that's why I'm telling you that you need to know how to manually light that burner. So you're going to want to practice, and you're going to need to buy things like fuel, and we've talked about your utensils. Also, when I first started, gosh, I mean, I could tell you so many stories of all the mistakes I've made backpacking. But, you know, one of the mistakes that I've made early on was that I'm actually trying to keep mindful of the time. It's 5:46. We have still quite a bit to cover. So, but I'll just say this real quick. So when I first started, I remember one of my trips, I brought one bowl and that was it. And oh man, did that make things really difficult during dinner time, because I really wanted to have like tea, and then I only had that one bowl for my food, and so I couldn't have tea. So making sure that you're mindful of like, wait, do I have a bowl for drinking? Do I have a bowl for my food? Making sure to plan ahead is so important. And then obviously, as you're also getting out there, you're going to need to know, depending on where you're going to be backpacking, you might need to have a bear can, which is this canister that you buy at the store. There's different ones. I'm not going to get into all the details, but usually the place you are backpacking at it will say in the permits if you need that. Bear can. On the John Muir Trail, we needed that. So it's extra weight. And so remember that when you're cooking outdoors, you may want to bring biodegradable soap with you, and also some kind of a quick dry towel to like help you to clean your stuff. And so these are all considerations. So last week, I'm just going to touch briefly on these because I want to get through. Last week we talked about clothing briefly. You should have your day hiking clothing, but for nighttime, make sure you're comfortable. So bring warm clothes. Remember knowing what the weather is going to be. What I was saying last week is make sure to bring a beanie. Make sure to bring a gaiter in case it gets really cold. And also it can cover your face. Making sure that you have gloves, because in the mornings it can get extremely cold. And so, you know, the more you prepare, the more comfortable you're going to be, the better time you're going to have. So important. Bring an extra pair of socks. Don't forget that at night, you're not going to want to sleep in your dirty socks from the day. You know, you usually want to leave those out, let them air out, and then you can change into warm, clean, comfortable socks that you wear over and over again each night that you're out on the trail. So making sure you have things like that are going to make a big difference as you're hiking. And then I always recommend like a puffy jacket. I have a couple and I love them. They're REI puffy jackets and they keep me super warm. And if I need extra layers, remember I talked about having that rain jacket. So you definitely are going to need your map. You're going to need your compass, reminding you to try to take a class. And if you're going to be depending on your cell phone, make sure you have that battery pack. Don't forget your battery pack. That needs to be added to, you know, our lists here. And then your food, you know, your water and your energy drinks, your bars. Make sure if you're going to be backpacking, especially longer distances, that you have electrolytes, especially at night. You need to be hydrating. You need to be replenishing all of the electrolytes you lost throughout the day. Okay, so it's really important. We're going to talk a little bit about, the water right now. So as I said, being on the John Muir Trail, we did have to filter water, and we used many different systems. I've used Sawyer systems that are, you know, you grab the bottle, a water bottle, and you squeeze. Super easy. Their squeeze is actually quite good for, you know, backpackers that want to go super ultra lightweight. And I mean, I've used that, and I've also used the bags. What was the brand we used? Catadine. I don't know if I'm saying it right, but they have a great one that you can pump. You just put a pump in the running water, and you just like pump, and then it spews out the water with a little hose, or you put all the water in a bag and you hang it from a tree, and then it just filters through gravity. So, you know, there's so many different brands out there. It's just going to depend on how much weight and, you know, how long you're going for. Like if you're just going for an overnight, like I said, I've gone with the squeeze and I'm fine. If you're going longer, you may want to invest in something like that gravity bag or the pump filter. So definitely let me know if that answers your question regarding purification, April. Richard, REI Sale, question mark. And Lisa said, yes, REI is having the biggest sale of the year starting tomorrow. Awesome. Thank you guys. And as you know, REI is our sponsor. We're really grateful to them for being able to support the challenge and talks like this. All right, so we're gonna jump into the last of today's talk. So we've talked about what I told you in the promo. I said we would talk about planning, we would talk about how to pack your pack, we would talk about gear. So we're getting close to the end of the gear checklist. Let me show you the slide. So here is some items that I just want to talk about briefly because we talked about clothing. All right, so when I backpack or when I take long trips, I really recommend using something like I call them a water bladder, and those are the bags, like, for example, Camelback or Osprey or Gregory Packs has one, which I currently use. I like having that because that's where I keep a lot of water, and I use it for cooking and all of that good stuff. But I also like bringing a bottle water. Now, I usually use Nalgene bottles, and I use that for my electrolytes. So I highly recommend you use both, especially as you continue your backpacking journeys and you go longer. And again, when you're planning, you're going to need to know how much water am I carrying and when is my next water source. So that's going to help you with, how many different bottles and, bags, bladders you carry, or usually it's just one bladder because they can go up to 3 liters. But water reservoirs, definitely gonna want to invest into your trekking poles because they help you to balance, and especially as you have that extra weight, right? Like your pack may be super heavy. So the more you can ensure that your pack fits really well, the less the balancing is going to be an issue. I also recommend wearing boots when you backpack because now you're adding on extra weight and ankle support, right? Super important. And absolutely investing into a GPS unit. I think it's so important, especially if you're going to do something like really far away from home. So let's see. George says a hydro flask would probably be too heavy, right? Yeah, personally, honestly, I don't recommend it for backpacking. I think they're fine for like day hikes. If you're going for an overnight, and again, remember, that's why I say practice with your pack. Pack your pack before you go on the trail and see, like, should I take things out? Because the last thing you want is the more stuff you have to carry, the more miserable you're going to be. Trust me. So you're going to want to be super lightweight. And that's why I say the Nalgene bottles are better because they're super lightweight. And here's another tip. Let's see. We have 6 minutes before we hit an hour. I think Facebook kicks you off. Sorry, guys. So if it gets really cold at night, you can boil water and put it in your Nalgene bottle. Make sure you super close it. Make sure it's like that it's, no water spills out, but you can put that in your sleeping bag and it'll keep you warm overnight. Trust me, I've backpacked in the snow and that made the difference between sleeping and not sleeping. So that's a little tip. Let's see what Angela says. Test the bite valves with the bladders. I can't stand them and never seem to get enough water from them. I prefer a Nalgene. Let's see. It's not letting me see all of your comment here. I'm trying to see more. It's not letting me. Sorry, Angela. It's not really being great. Okay. So you said she prefers a Nalgene. All right. Yeah, no, I mean, everyone has their own preferences, right? And so that's why we're here. We're here to like talk about like what works, what doesn't work. So because we only have a few minutes, I want to answer your question regarding the Trans-Catalina Trail. Look, I didn't love the Trans-Catalina Trail from this perspective. When we went, it was extremely hot and it was completely exposed, and there is a lot of elevation gain on that trail as well, and just the heat made it a little bit miserable. JMT absolutely loved it, but I would highly recommend, if I did it again, I would do it in sections. I would go like 1 week here, 1 week here, and then it would just make it that much better. I think just day in and day out of like that hustle for 21 days, it just was extreme. So personally, Trans Catalina Trail, it was cool. I think I prefer being in like more of a forest type of a trail. And that's why I said something like Big Pine Lakes was incredible, because it had trees and there were lakes and it just had so much more, where the Trans Catalina, there are a lot of times you're in the middle of this almost like a desert terrain. And I do think it's something to experience, don't get me wrong. But make sure that when you go, the weather is, is comfortable. Because hiking in super hot heat is not super fun. So let's finish up. Obviously you're going to want to have your personal items. Everyone is going to have their own needs. But, making sure, we've talked a lot about this, packing it in, packing it out, bringing extra trash bags, bringing your toilet paper, your trowel, making sure you have your 10 essentials. If considerations like, are there insects? Do I need insect repellent? You're going to want to make sure, by the way, we didn't talk about blisters, but maybe we can talk about blisters next week. I did get blisters on the John Muir Trail, because you're on your feet for like 10 plus hours a day for 21 days straight. You're going to get them. So you can treat them easily. I'll give you the quick formula. You do Neosporin. So you cut, if there's a little, bubble, you cut it and you open it, you drain it. You put Neosporin on it and you put a Band-Aid over it and you let it sit overnight. And usually by the next day you're better. But we also used, it's called Lucama tape, and that really helped. Once we got a blister, we would like cover the blister with the Lucama tape. That Lucama tape would not move. So I will disclaimer again, it was really hard to take it off, but that really, I noticed that most blister Band-Aids would fall off because you're on your feet and you're sweating, so it would fall off. And so you would run into that problem. But once we found out about the Lucama tape, like it stayed in place and we were fine. We were able to continue hiking even with the blisters. So you're definitely going to need your tools, your repair kit items, your duct tape, because you never know. I talked about last week how my friend, my partner on the JMT, her tent, and I'm just kind of looking at the time here. So we've got a few more minutes. We'll try to hurry it up. But her tent broke. And so she knew how to use, there was like an extra piece that you use to fix that. So always be aware of what do I do in case of an emergency like that. Knowing the animals, again, that goes into the planning. We saw a bear on the JMT and I was able to scare it away. Your emergency items, which is so important, a part of the 10 essentials. Letting someone know where you're going. That's super important. And the extras, right? Making sure you have your car keys. Oh my gosh, wait, I could tell you guys all of the mistakes I've made. I literally lost my keys one time because I didn't clip it in right away. Once you lock your car, you guys, clip it into that your backpacking pack should have a little clip for your keys. Do it right away. Trust me, it was horrible. And we were far from home. So thank God I found my keys, but it was awful. I don't recommend anyone. Bring your ID, bring some cash. And then don't forget the extras, right? Bring a little day pack in case you go do peaks while on your trip, your camera. I will say again, on the JMT, I brought my nice camera and then I was like chucking it. I'm like, I don't want the extra weight. But if it's an overnight, that's fine. Bringing your star chart, your journal, your sketchbook, a pen and pencil, maybe a book. I do Kindle on my phone, and that was awesome on the JMT. I would read at night before bed. Bring a card or card games, binoculars, and I think for the most part, you could also bring those two-way radios if you're going with someone. But for the most part, those are the items. There's a lot, right? There's a lot. So let's see how long Facebook leaves us chatting for. So Cerise said, thank you so much. Richard says, Leukotape is a staple. You guys, never again will I trust any other tape except that Leukotape. Hey, Bill. So it looks like I have a friend joining us as well. So you guys, that's pretty much it when it comes to backpacking 101. I could go on and on about all the things that I've done and all the mistakes I've made. My goal is to help you to avoid those mistakes, but you're going to make them. You know, in life, we're going to make mistakes. And the only way to learn is to get out there and try. What do you have to lose? You've got nothing to lose. You've got everything to gain. And I hope that you guys love backpacking as much as I do. And I hope this was helpful. Leave me your comments. I hope, you know, I'm here to serve. Thank you guys so much for supporting the challenge. If this was helpful, we do have a PayPal link for donations. And I believe this Saturday we're going to have yoga. So please use your tools, be educated, and let me know how else I can serve you guys. I really hope you enjoyed the class. And I'm going to stay on just for a few more moments. And if you don't have anything else, then I will say goodbye. You're welcome, Rebecca. Angela said she's inspired to get back out there. Yay! Awesome. You're welcome, George. All right, you guys. Have a good night. Have a blessed rest of your day. And I will see you next week for Backpacking 102. All right? You're welcome. Bye, Nicole. Bye, Lindsay. See you guys later. I'm going to go ahead and finish out.